This is Hot Mike.
Hot Mike.
On the networks of WDAY.
WDAY.
Here's Dom Izzo.
Welcome back, everybody. Hour 2 on this Football Friday, ready to rock and roll. Don't forget, before we wrap up the show, we got Stone Cold Picks with my dad coming up before we say goodbye on this Friday. Big topic here on this show, and especially those that follow Summit League FCS football, happened at the NCAA convention in Charlotte earlier this week. The NCAA signed off on a proposal that reduces the transition period for teams moving from Division II to Division I, Division III to Division I. Certainly our own backyard, that affects the University of St. Thomas, which means their postseason eligibility gets cut down by 1 year. So this time next season, the St. Thomas men's and women's basketball teams will be eligible to go to the NCAA tournament. The St. Thomas football team, which we'll see in Fargo next November, will be eligible for the FCS playoffs. The man who runs the athletic department joins us on this Friday morning. Dr. Phil Esten joins us on this Friday. It's great to see you, bud. I know you were just visiting off air. You've been working on this for a while. When you got wind that you got the thumbs up, what was the emotion?
Yeah, well, good morning. I appreciate the opportunity to chat about this. Certainly it's something that we've been working hard on behalf of our student athletes and our coaches for a while. Ultimately, we're in the business of giving them great experiences, and the ultimate experience at the end of the year is access to postseason championships. And so just really, really pleased with the process. We've been working with the Strategic Vision and Planning Committee on modernizing these rules. And, you think about North Dakota State went through this several years ago. The transfer portal didn't exist at that time, and NIL didn't exist at that time. And certainly those two things didn't even exist when we started, believe it or not, our reclassification period. And so that's been kind of thrust upon us in the last few years, and it's exacerbated, I think, the challenges of this provisional period. So I'm just really happy that the NCAA and those that serve on these committees thought that it was important to think about this in a contemporary way, and then we got this thing shifted.
The fact that you've had the kind of success, Phil, that you've had, whether it be football, men's basketball, baseball won the conference last year, did that in your own mind say we're ready on the field for this?
It did, without a doubt. And I think some of those things, you never know going into this, Dom. I mean, who knows what our existing rosters, how they were going to compete, what recruiting was going to look like. Certainly something we had to navigate was the lack of access to postseason, and how is that going to affect recruiting. But I do think that we've been as competitive, if not more so, than some thought we might be. And I think that we've shown that we belong in the Summit League, and we belong in the Division I level, and even off the field, the proverbial field, right? I think our institution very much looks and acts like a Division I institution from an academic profile perspective. Our facilities, especially with the new arena coming on board a year from now, our facilities are on par, I think, with many in the Summit League and others across Division I. And so this was just the next step, and again, excited for our student athletes.
So just for people that don't understand, the timeline was originally going to be March of 27 for the NCAA basketball tournament and the fall of 26 for football for the FCS playoffs. For your coaches, is this like, hey, how much of a heads up did you have to give them that we're trying for this?
Yeah, well, first I'll say there are still a few things that we need to complete this spring. Now,
Right.
I think we'll complete them. It's a self-study and some other things that are required during reclassification, and we're on pace to do it. But we've got the pathway now. So long as we complete these things, we'll be eligible a year from now. And, our coaches have known for a couple of years that this is something we're working on, but they've also known that they can't say with certainty to recruits that this is going to happen. And today's environment anymore, it's not just recruiting new student athletes, it's recruiting and retaining your current rosters. And so how do we get into these current rosters with our current student athletes and have them feel some confidence and optimism in the fact that, hey, let's stick around for another year, and you could be among the first at St. Thomas to ever go to an NCAA championship at the Division I level. And I think that motivates a lot of the kids that we've been able to recruit over the last couple of years to stay at St. Thomas and build that legacy.
To have this for football now, Phil, and know you're playing North Dakota State next year, I know it's the last game of the season, but you're eligible to win the Pioneer and then go to the FCS playoffs. What kind of double whammy is that for next football season?
Yeah, well, frankly, we may have thought differently about scheduling that game, and we knew this was going to look like that. But, of course, North Dakota State is the gold standard at the FCS level, and the opportunity to come to Fargo and and play in that facility in front of your fans. And, I have a lot of respect for what Matt Larson does with the program and the entire university. So it's certainly something that makes a lot of sense for us, regardless of the year. It so happens to fall the last season or the last game of the year because of the weird schedule next year, the way the calendar plays out. And, originally this was going to be our very last game in provisional period. And we felt like that was something we could play for, something that we were looking forward to. And as it now turns out, it could be the last game if we win the conference, right? I mean, there's a lot of ifs that have to happen if we compete for the conference championship before playoffs. And so we may think about that game a little bit differently now than we would have otherwise. I maybe should have written a couple things into the contract around playing second teams and third teams. But anyway, it's, really excited to come and play in that atmosphere. It's as I said, it's the gold standard in FCS football. We're excited to be part of that.
The access now to postseason play, how much does that even change? Because everybody asks me, when's St. Thomas going to go and move into the Missouri Valley Football Conference? I know you've been asked that. Is that on the table at all now with postseason eligibility?
Right now we like the Pioneer Football League. It's a good fit for us, Dom. The schools that are in that league look a lot like St. Thomas. We think similarly about football. It's an important part of our athletic department, fabric of our community. It's an important part of campus life and campus excitement and energy, and it's an engagement opportunity for alumni and donors and others. So football is really important to us. The investment that we make in the PFL is very good in the Pioneer Football League. To invest to be competitive in the Missouri Valley Football Conference is another level. And that at this point we're really, really happy in the PFL. And if we win the Pioneer Football League, we've got the automatic qualification of the playoffs, and then you never know what'll happen from there. And you move into a league like the MVFC, and that's a gauntlet, right? That's a gauntlet of a schedule. And not to say that, I have a lot of respect for that league as well, but we're really, really happy with the PFL.
I have to ask, as a schedule nerd, does this now change your philosophy on FBS games? Can you get them now that you're reaching out to potentially have those down the road?
So, yeah, the interesting wrinkle in the FBS landscape is that if FBS schools play St. Thomas, it doesn't count towards their winnable games because we're a non-scholarship school. And so that's a difficult case to make to some of those FBS programs. So we have not scheduled any of those games at this point. It doesn't mean that wouldn't happen down the road, but at this point, an FBS school has to be okay giving up that win, and have some confidence that they're not going to need it for bowl eligibility. But nonetheless, we've got Harvard coming to town in a couple of years. We went to Harvard a year ago. That's a really good game for us. Some of those profile games with Ivy League schools or some of the Patriot League schools are good for us. And of course, having the Dakotas and Northern Iowa and some others in the league that you're in so close makes that to us that's a no-brainer.
Believe me, I'm infinitely jealous that you got to go to Harvard. I want the Bison to play some of those Ivy League schools, because that had to be a really neat road trip.
Yeah, well, for our alumni, it was great. It was one of our, probably one of the first road trips as an alum base that we took.
Yeah.
And it's, you guys have been doing it for years. When you go to Colorado and you go to all these, Nebraska, wherever you guys go, and it's a great experience for your alumni, not to mention your student athletes. And so that Harvard game for us was great. And of course, being on that campus and playing in that stadium with the history and the tradition and the pomp and circumstance that comes with playing Ivy League made a lot of, it was great experience for us.
Your men's basketball team currently leads the Summit League. They're unbeaten. They've knocked off South Dakota State. They beat North Dakota State. You're going to get national television when the Bison are there in February. Tell me about, Johnny Tower well, but to have this kind of success almost seamlessly at Division I, it surprised me, Phil. Has surprised you?
Johnny and I were classmates at St. Thomas. We're both alumni from UST, and I have long admired, before I came back, the way that Johnny puts his teams together and the way that he coaches. He recruits student athletes that buys into his system, and he runs a system, I think, that's somewhat unique, and they play their tails off for him. And they take care of the ball. They make good decisions on offense. They defend the ball really, really tough, and it's an exciting brand of basketball, I think. And so, do I think we expected to win 19 games and then 20 games and then have the potential to win 20 plus games in year 4? No, I don't think anybody expected that, but I'm not surprised that Johnny's having some success because of the way he coaches. Those guys buy into his culture and his philosophy. So I'm just excited to see that it's coming along as soon as it is, and that we're getting some recognition for it. And College Insider Top 25, mid-major Top 25, and some other things. I think that's appropriate, but it's also good to see.
Does this mean that the University of Minnesota is never going to schedule in basketball?
We continue to say, well, we'd love to play the University of Minnesota. And I know everybody's got to make their own decisions. And they've got the decisions that are made are local decisions. And I've got a great deal of respect for Mark Coyle and Ben Johnson, and they've got to make decisions that are best for them. And we're busy scheduling the way that we think we need to schedule for St. Thomas.
Well, it would be great for everybody. I know why that they don't want to, but man, that would be some kind of environment at Williams Arena if it ever came about. You mentioned the new arena. We featured it in our broadcast when St. Thomas was up here a couple weeks ago. We were talking off air. You're on schedule for an opening in October. How can this transform? Your university is already out there and it's spectacular, but what does this do when you open this thing in October?
Yeah, it'll give us a facility that's commensurate with a Division I experience. And, we continue to say, let's invest commensurate with our expectations. If we expect to compete for championships in the Summit League, then our resources should kind of equal those expectations. And I think this facility is just another demonstration of commitment to being successful at this level at St. Thomas. And, it'll be both the hockey and a basketball facility. We'll have a second sheet of ice when needed. We'll have 2 basketball practice facilities, one for the women and one for the men, not to mention the main competitive arena with premium seats and club spaces and all the other amenities that come with it. And again, that's an experience that Division I student athletes expect. And in our marketplace, with professional sports and the University of Minnesota, it's an experience that those that are consuming and going to Division I athletics expect. And so I think we're providing a venue, both from a student athlete perspective and a fan perspective, that it's commensurate with that Division I experience.
How much have you seen your just profile change? Granted, people obviously knew you around here, but is there more eyeballs on you now that you're Division I? Have you found that to be the case? I know we talked when you made the move. Has that been accurate?
Yeah, I think a little tongue in cheek, we said we'll know if our national visibility is kind of taken hold when people ask where St. Thomas is. Stop asking where St. Thomas is. We're not the one in Florida or the one in Texas or the island in the Caribbean. We're in St. Paul, and I think we started to see that a little bit. When you start seeing St. Thomas without the MN in parentheses after it, then I think we're starting to gain some national visibility, and we've started to see that. I think, our success in football has helped, our success in basketball has helped, our hockey, the competitiveness in the CCHA, but also the move to the NCHC in a couple of years certainly has helped. The ability for us to play on national television in a couple of different sports, and as you mentioned, we'll host a nationally televised game here in a couple of weeks against the Bison, and so those things all certainly help. So we're starting to see progress there too, and I think the great thing about that is, I've been in a lot of other places before coming back to St. Thomas. Athletics should be used as a platform to tell the great stories that are happening on campus, right? If we don't use the megaphone of athletics to tell some of the great things that are happening in our in our classrooms and laboratories and schools, et cetera, then we're not taking advantage of that stage. And so we've been able to tell some stories about what's happening at St. Thomas to audiences that maybe didn't have that opportunity to listen in the past. So that's been important for us too.
A couple minutes left here with Phil Esten, AD at St. Thomas. I got an email to ask, how much did the Summit League, if any, played a role in helping to get the probationary period reduced by a year?
Yeah, a big role. Josh Fenton has been very supportive, and I'll say all of the ADs in the Summit League have been supportive of St. Thomas pursuing a reduction in the provisional period. Most of this league has gone through it. And so when you think about that, I think there's some empathy there. They also acknowledge that, the modern day provisional period of classification is different maybe than it was 10 or 15 years ago. So all of the athletic directors and presidents have been supportive, but Josh Fenton, our commissioner, I think is one of the best in college athletics, has been supportive and has been proactive in helping to move this along. So we're grateful for that. And I have to say too, even back to before Josh arrived, without Tom Duple, we wouldn't be here. And so the Summit League has played a massive role in St. Thomas's trajectory from an athletic standpoint.
I got a couple things left. The NCAA is tossing out the idea now of just 5 years, no red shirt, no waiver. How do you stand on that as an AD? Where would you come down for all sports?
Yeah, I think we've got the details, the devil in the details here will be really, really important. On the surface, it makes some sense to me. There's a waiver for everything anymore. And, I think there's some gamesmanship that happens. Understandably, everybody does it with redshirting and medicals and everything else. And I think if we can get to a point where we think that it's legal and we don't think that there's going to be a lot of, pursuit of challenging this from a legal perspective, and that we can hold this rule on the surface, it makes some sense, Dom. Again, I think that the details of it are going to matter when it comes down to passing this thing from a brass tack standpoint. But, it seems like all of our student athletes are pursuing a fifth year somehow, some way, coming out of COVID, transferring, whatever else hardships we've had. And so maybe it makes some sense in the long run.
Yeah, I'm interested to see. You're right, though. There's got to be a sticky wicket in there somewhere, right, to potentially trip that up.
Yeah, I mean, somebody will challenge it,
Yeah.
and someone then will want a 6th year, and so I just think that we've got to get to a space, and this is where congressional intervention and what we're doing, I think, is so important. We've got to get to a space where state laws aren't necessarily superseding rules compliance within the NCAA, where there's some uniformity in how rules are applied from state to state, university to university, department to department. And so I think all of these things make a lot more sense when we've got some uniformity across all of college athletics.
The current North Dakota State offensive coordinator worked with you for a couple years in Jake Landry. You got a good Jake Landry story you can share on air here?
Nope, I don't have anything I can share, Don. But I'll tell you, I texted Jake that night that you guys won the national championship, which, we were all pulling for North Dakota State, just because I was so happy for him. He spent a couple years at St. Thomas. He's a good person. He's a good husband. He's a good father. I think he does things the right way. His values aligned with our values. They align with your values. And so I was really happy for Jake, and I know he's worked really hard to have these opportunities. So happy for Jake, happy for all entire Bison Nation.
Last thing, the hot rumor out there is you're not long for the Summit League, that the Big East or something like that would be a great fit. I know you're not going to give me anything specifically on that, but if that opportunity came, is that something that St. Thomas would be interested in?
Yeah, I'm going to answer it this way, Dom, in that I think the grass is greenest where you water it. And we're really happy in the Summit League like we are in the Pioneer Football League. And, we're not winning conference championships right now. It doesn't mean that I don't think we can. I think at some point we'll compete for conference championships, hopefully with some regularity, and nobody's got a crystal ball. But right now we've got to take care of business in the Summit League, and it's the perfect league for us. I love our regional rivalries. When the Dakotas come to town and other schools in the league come to town, we've got a lot of your alumni in our market. And I think that helps us a lot from an environment and atmosphere standpoint in our venues. And this is something that matters to St. Thomas. And so we do not have eyes that are wandering anything further than the Summit League. We're really happy with how things are going in the league.
I really appreciate the time this morning. I look forward to seeing you down in Sioux Falls at the basketball tournament. Be well, and thanks again for doing this morning.
Yeah, thanks so much. Appreciate you. Roll Toms.
There he goes, Phil Esten, Athletic Director at University of St. Thomas, giving us some time this morning. The Tommies, this time next year, will be NCAA tournament eligible. Again, I think we all probably know where the football game will go, but again, Glenn Caruso coming back is going to be a great storyline in its own right. But they could have already wrapped things up with the Pioneer Football Championship when they come here. I think there is some interesting storylines on that. And the basketball goes without saying. That men's team is dynamite. And we could have a real kerfuffle. We get to Sioux Falls, and they have a chance to win it and are ineligible this year, only setting the table for what could potentially happen next year down in Sioux Falls. We're overdue for a break. We had a few emails to catch up on. Getting closer to doing some NFL picks with my dad. Back on Hot Mic on this Friday morning, right after this.